Good evening everyone and a warm welcome to the Society's half-year meeting. I'm Helen Wiseman, your Society President, and it's a real pleasure to be chairing this evening. Apologies to those online, we are maybe slightly late starting. We've had some traffic difficulties around Warwick and actually coming out of London this evening, so we know that people will be joining as the meeting goes on. So we are holding this meeting both in person and online to allow members who've not been able to come here today to log on and contribute. I can let you know that we have over 80 members logged online and 35 members in attendance, so we're quorate and good to go. Before we start, I should let members in the room know that we're not expecting any fire drills, so if the alarm goes, we'll all need to exit via the nearest fire exit. We've put what we hope is an informative session together, where you'll be able to ask questions and find out more about your society, as your board really wants you to feel that the evening has been worthwhile. So if I can make a few introductions. Sharing the table here with me this evening, I have Vivian Waddell and Heather Richardson, our two Vice Presidents, Phil Ponsonby, the Society's Chief Executive, Edward Parker, the Society's Secretary, Peter Kelly, our Chief Financial Officer, and Pete Westall, our Chief Values Officer. And in the room we have most of our board and member engagement committee and others from our senior leadership team, so welcome. There are a few items I should go through before we start the meeting formally. For our members in the room, you'll have been given a copy of your members' pack and the half-yearly report upon arrival. For those of you online, you can find copies on our website. And just to say, if you're not familiar with Teams, hopefully we'll have seen the useful guidance holding slides, which explained about the Q&A section and how to raise your hand within Teams. You'll find the toolbar at either the top or bottom of your screen. You may find it, depending on what device you're using, somewhere else on your screen, but you will find the toolbar. I should also point out that if you've been a member of the Society for at least 6 months, you're eligible to vote. For those of us in the room, we'll be voting by a show of hands, holding the red cards, while those of you on your line will be asked to vote by raising your hand in Microsoft Teams. When we get to the voting, we'll be voting in what you might call reverse order, as this just seems to work more easily on Teams. So first we will ask members to raise their hand if they wish to abstain, then those who wish to vote against, then the votes in favour. I'll talk you through this when we come to that part of the meeting. At the moment you don't need to do anything. So if the online technology fails, we'll have another couple of goes, and if that still doesn't work, then the meeting will continue for information, and members in the room will be asked to vote by a show of hand. Members online will be invited to a short meeting on the 25th of October to conduct the voting. Both voting results will then be combined and formally announced. In the event that the online functionality completely fails, the meeting will be adjourned to the 25th of October. We obviously hope that's not the case and it's not something we need to do, but we felt it was worth mentioning in advance just in case something significant does go wrong with the tech. We have a lengthy Q&A session during the meeting. If you're online, you can type your questions in the Q&A section. Please note that the chat functionality has been disabled as it's easier to question management. Remind members again that with large numbers, we have limited time for individuals asking long, complicated questions or asking more than one question. So if you have one question, make it count and make it the thing that's uppermost on your mind. Also, if you open the Q&A section on Teams, you may well not be able to see the full presentation on your screen. To sort that out, just hover your mouse over the grey box that says half-year meeting and click on the 3 white dots that appear. Then in the drop-down menu, click Fit to Frame. With all that covered, I'm going to now run through the agenda for this evening. First, we'll have a video update on the Society's progress for the first 6 months of the financial year. Peter Kelly will take us through the Society's financial performance before handing over to Pete Westall, and he'll present on the progress we've made with our steering wheel measures. We'll then review the minutes from our last year's half-year meetings, and Phil Ponsonby will comment on various items since the half-year point and some matters looking ahead. This will be followed by a general Q&A session. We'll then vote on the half-year report and minutes and let you know the results of the recent elections. We'll finish with any other business and aim to close at 8 p.m. So moving to our first item, the half-year update, we prepared a video which presents the highlights of the last 6 months, and then Peter Kelly will take us through the financial numbers and Pete Westall will present our steering wheel performance after a few quick words of introduction from Phil Ponsonby.
The Society has had a strong first half in 2023 against a backdrop of challenging trading conditions and the cost of living crisis. We've focused on delivering high-quality products and exceptional member value, while also planning for the future, guided by our refreshed society purpose. We believe that through the power of cooperation, we're building a fairer, more sustainable and ethical future. We shared our refreshed purpose with members at our AGM in May. This year, the formal business of the AGM became part of a wider event called the Fairer Living Festival. We welcomed over 1,300 people to the event that celebrated everything our colleagues, members and partners do every day to bring our purpose to life. The weather was kind and a great day was had by all. To help us deliver our purpose, we also introduced 5 new trust pillars to help keep us focused on what's most important. We're a values-driven, commercially successful society that works to create a brighter tomorrow. Our financials are looking strong for the first half of 2023. We've seen a 14.2% increase in gross sales compared with the same time last year, resulting in a 16.7% rise in revenue. Our operating profit before significant items was 3.7 million. Our food business has performed well, with like-for-like sales growth of 7%. And our travel division has had a great start to the year too, with gross sales up 26% on last year and 85% up on the same period in 2019. We've also had a positive first half in our childcare business, with year-on-year gross sales up by 6.8% and occupancy increasing from 70.6% to 73.5%. As a society, we've invested 7.9 million in new sites, advanced systems and carbon reduction technology this year. This includes launching 3 new food stores, Bryce Norton in Oxfordshire, Droitwich in Worcestershire and Bishop's Cleeve in Gloucestershire, and a new nursery in Lanesfield, Wolverhampton. Work is also underway on our new nursery at our Warwick head office, and 2 existing childcare sites have been refitted. And we're also investing in a new travel website to make booking experiences even smoother. We help our colleagues grow and do their best, and our first half results are testament to their hard work. Our remarkable colleagues not only passionately deliver an outstanding service every day, but also actively give back to their communities, including 9,973 hours of volunteering in the first half. We've supported our colleagues' well-being this year by continuing with our enhanced colleague discount across our trading groups and introducing WageStream, a new service that gives colleagues greater control over their finances. And to help keep our colleagues, members and customers safe, we have invested 1.6 million on safety devices, security monitoring and preventative measures since the launch of our Safer Stores programme last year. Our members guide everything we do, and this year we've given them even more value by introducing a new range of member-only deals. We also held member discount days in selected food stores in February and June, which were hugely popular. And in May we launched a member lunchtime meal deal discount. As a result, we have welcomed even more new members this year, over 44,000 of them, nearly double the number in the first half of 2019. And by giving members more reasons to shop with us, nearly 1 in every £3 spent now comes from members. We use our profits to do good things in our communities and the environment. So far this year, we've given £67,300 in grants to 143 community groups. In April, we launched the Fairer Futures programme in partnership with Miss Macaroon to create opportunities for young people facing employability challenges. To support the environment, so far this year we've saved 50,000 food items from landfill with Too Good To Go. And we've reduced our energy use by 12%, saving £900,000 and a whopping 500 tonnes of CO2. Our colleagues have also worked especially hard to reduce energy use, which helped us gain the ED Energy Project of the Year award. we continue to step up and tackle difficult challenges to help build a fairer future for all. This year we've continued working with the Co-operative Party to lobby the government on issues that matter to us and our members, including making childcare more widely accessible, supporting community energy initiatives, improving the business landscape for co-ops, and tackling retail crime. So, all in all, we've had a busy and rewarding first half to the year. Looking ahead to the second half, we've got great plans in place to continue to build on our trust pillars and deliver our purpose. Thank you for being a part of this thriving cooperative. Let's keep doing good together.
I think the film says it all, really, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the first half of the year. I'm going to hand over shortly to my colleagues Peter and Pete will take you through the financial and non-financial results of the first half of the year. But just before we get to that, I think it's really important that I recognise our remarkable colleagues, because it is challenging out there, and I'm sure you know this as members. Times are really hard, and we're facing into all sorts of difficulties across our trading operations, as are many organisations up and down the land. But our colleagues never cease to amaze me in terms of how resilient they are, how they face into these challenges, and how they do a brilliant job for our members and our communities in their everyday. So just before I hand it over to my colleagues, I wanted to say a big, big thank you to our colleagues for their unbelievable efforts in the first half of this year. Thank you. And now I will hand over to Pete.
Great, thank you, Phil, and welcome to our members and colleagues. Now, I'm going to spend a few minutes just taking you through the financial highlights delivered over half one, which comprised the 26 weeks ended 29th of July 2023. The full half-year results are available on our website, and that's under the Report and Accounts section at the bottom of the homepage. Now, top-line growth is crucial to any commercial organisation, and that's especially the case here at the Society. So I'm pleased to report that we've delivered significant increase in our top-line sales across half one, and that's amidst the challenge of the current economic backdrop. We have two measures of top-line trade, gross sales and revenue. And you can see from this slide, the first, gross sales. Gross sales effectively represents the cash we take through the till. So if you turn up at a travel site and you book £1,000 holiday, we recognise £1,000 as the gross sales. And the same as if you're in our food retail store, what you spend at the till, including VAT, goes into gross sales. So it's an important measure of cash sales coming through the Society. And I'm pleased to say that grew £96.2 million. And as the video said earlier on, that's 14.2% year-on-year growth, so it ended half one at 773.2 million. Now, 99% of our sales actually come through our three main trading divisions: food, retail, travel and childcare, and all three of those divisions posted quite strong sales growth year on year in the first half. And indeed, our gross sales performance in the first half of this year was 85% up on the figure 2 years ago, and that's an increase of 354 million over that period. So gross sales is moving pretty strongly in the right direction. And then the other measure is revenue. So we strip out VAT in revenue, and also if you're back in that booking that holiday, you've just paid £1,000. The commission we earn as a Society is around about £100 of that. So that's what we recognise as revenue. It's our agents' commission, and revenue again has shown a significant increase as well. It's increased £61.1 million to £426.1 million over the first half of the year, and that's actually an increase of 16.7%, and that's actually 100 million up on 2 years ago. So both measures of gross sales and revenue show quite a strong growth for Society over the first half of the year. And now we come on to our two key profit measures. Again, we have two. One is affectionately called EBITDA. That's earnings before interest, tax and depreciation. And that is a real key focus at the Society, because that's a key measure of cash profitability. So it's one we focus on quite a bit. Now, on the face of it, this might look like a slight reduction, and indeed it is at a headline level, £14.5 million achieved this year versus 14.6 last year. But if you remember last year, we announced in the results in half one that we'd recognised £700,000 of one-off lottery grants that were awarded to our childcare business 10 years earlier that effectively matured in the first half last year. So that was a complete one-off entry last year. So actually it flattered last year's results. So if you strip that out on an underlying basis, actually the growth year on year has been £600,000 because last year's number would have been 13.9. So that's quite a significant growth in EBITDA. And similarly for operating profits, so that's effectively our EBITDA measure, and we add back depreciation and amortisation to show our sort of statutory profits, if you like, for the society. And again, that's £3.7 million, down on the figure last year of 4.3. But again, if you add back the £700,000 of lottery grants, that's actually a slight increase of £100,000 over that period. And that's with the economic backdrop we have. That has manifest into our cost base, certainly through energy costs. And obviously, we've invested in colleague pay in that time as well. So I think both from a revenue perspective and also a profit perspective, we've sort of walked forward over the first half of the year, year on year. And then finally, net debt, which is an important financial measure that we report regularly to members. That's £37 million. It's fairly similar to the year-end number, which was £36.7 million. But as you can see, that's a growth of £5.8 million over this time last year. And that reflects our investment in the society. As the video said, we've invested £7.9 million in capital projects, not least 3 new food stores, 2 new nurseries, whilst they didn't open in the first half of the year. They're going to be open, in fact one is open, in the second half of the year. Nevertheless, the cash has been spent in the first half. And a number of sustainability investments, particularly, or primarily, sorry, should I say, in energy refrigeration investments, LED and some other projects to reduce our energy consumption. So net debt at 37, whilst that is an increase, that's about where we expected it to be. So we're fairly satisfied with that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, 99% of our gross sales comes from 3 main trading divisions: our food retail business, our travel business, and our childcare business. So I take each of those in turn. Our food business performed really well in the first half. It saw an increase in sales of 4.3%, which was £14.4 million increase. Now, the underlying like-for-like number was actually stronger than that. It was 7%, so that was a really strong like-for-like performance across the first half of the year. The reason why the headline sales number at 4.3 is slightly lower than the like-for-like sales number is because we've made some portfolio openings and closings effectively of stores. So we've opened 3 food convenience stores and closed 3 of our larger supermarket stores that don't fit our business model going forward. So that's the reason why the sales are slightly different, but nevertheless that's a strong increase in sales in food, and that you can see that in the revenue number as well, which is up 4.2% or 12.4 million to 305.3 million. So strong performance of food. Travel had a really strong first half, and in fact was up from a sales perspective and a profit perspective in every month of the first half. And actually, it was our biggest growing division by some margin in the first half of the year. It actually grew its gross sales by 82.6 million. You can see to almost 400 million pounds of sales. That represents a 26% increase in sales year on year. And actually, if you look at the year before that, we start to get into the sort of years that were starting to be affected by COVID. That's a £340 million increase in sales. And actually, when you compare those results against Mintel, which looks at the industry performance here, we're outperforming the Mintel index. And as the video said, against the last first half year before COVID, we are 85% up on that figure. So that's a really pleasing result in travel. The revenue number, which, as I say, strips out all of it. So we just take the agency commission into the revenue number, which is why it's a lower number. That actually is doubled. So it's increased by more than the 26% growth you see in gross sales. And a couple of reasons for that really is, one, the sales growth itself was transferred into revenue. The second thing is that we've seen lower cancellations now. So cancellations in the travel industry tend to run at between 4 and 5%. They're around about 6 to 7% at the moment, but in the prior year they were double digit. budget, they were more like 12 to 15%. So cancellations really started to slow down and to normalise. And the only other thing from a revenue perspective is, with the success and the growth in gross sales, that means we get other volume discounts from operators which come into our revenue line. So that's why that's growing pretty strongly. And then finally, in terms of our big three trading divisions, our childcare division had a strong first half. Sales were up 7% to £22.5 million, which was a £1.5 million increase in sales. And indeed, over the last 2 years, the first half sales in childcare has actually grown by over 20%, so £4 million over the figure 2 years ago. We have closed one site in childcare. We've closed our site in Croydon in the first half, and as I mentioned before in the net debt, we've invested in 2 more sites, one of which is open now but wasn't open in the first half, and the other is actually in this building. We're just waiting for the Ofsted registration, and that is ready and raring to go. And then finally, the 2 smaller divisions. So our post office division primarily sits within our food estate. That saw a slight reduction in sales from 1.6 down to 1.5, and that follows probably more of a national trend about how much we are using post offices. Our commission levels have sort of dropped off a little bit with the reduction in footfall and the use of mail services in post office primarily. And then finally, our revenue number in our utilities division, which comprises our phone co-op, our energy, and our flexible benefits elements to our business, that reduced by £500,000 to 4.5 million. Half of that was because call volumes, both in terms of our residential call volumes and business call volumes, have been dropping. They've been dropping over a long period of time, and we see that again in the figures here. And our flexible benefits business, which primarily consists of a childcare voucher scheme, that childcare voucher scheme closed a number of years ago to new entrants, so that's just been running down and will continue to run down over the next few years. So that really explains what's happened from a utilities perspective. So hopefully that gives you a flavour of how the society has traded and how revenue has translated into profits in the first half of the year. As I said, the full report and accounts is available on the website should members wish to view it. And I'm now going to hand over to Pete Weston, who's going to take us through some of the non-financial measures.
Thanks, Peter. So Peter's an accountant. You'd expect Peter to say the numbers are important. We're a cooperative, and we're a really proud cooperative. So one of the things we have in the society is a steering wheel. The steering wheel, we can move on one slide, thank you. So the steering wheel itself comprises of 20 different measures. Only 4 of those are financial. The other 16 are about us as a co-op doing the right thing, whether that be about cooperation, whether it be about people, whether it be about delivery, or whether it be about customers. The measures we have on there are really important. Those measures, the 16 of them, are regularly reviewed to make sure they're still fit for purpose, and there's work going on now to be able to save the ones we've got for next year to make sure they're still relevant, practical, and are driving the right behaviours. But from a co-op point of view, I would expect you to be asking, well, of those 20 measures, we've gone through the financial ones, how are we performing on the other 16? Peter does numbers, I do thumbs up and down because I can cope with that. So of those 16, you'll notice that 2 thumbs are down. You'll notice that we have 4 thumbs which are flat and all the others are positive. I'll go through each of those segments in turn. From a cooperation point of view, a great deal of work, really good work has been done. Alison's in the room as Chief Marketing Officer. Our colleagues on the shop floor, all the different sites, and so many different people to drive that trade with members up. At the moment, half year, 30% of our trade is now done with members. You saw a stat on the video earlier. Probably as importantly, I would guess, if you move on to the member recruitment bit, we've welcomed over 44,000 members in the first half of this year. The fact that 11,000 of them are under 30 gives real hope, I think, for a future of this society. And clearly work has progressed on that since half year. Supporting our communities. As a leading cooperative, one would assume that thumb was up. So the question is, well, why has it gone down? It's 9,900 volunteering hours of communities, our colleagues in community have been logged in the first half of this year. That's against 11,000 last year. The reason for that, broadly speaking, we are revamping our community proposition. Your board signed off a new purpose statement. It was introduced at the AGM, the Fairer Living Festival, in May. That proposition now, in terms of the community, we are engaging stakeholders to ensure that our community work is fit for purpose, fit for a leading co-op over the coming years. Those volunteering hours, I'm convinced, will come back again in the second half of the year, but that explains that bit. Phil started with people. You shouldn't have favourites, but clearly the people segment on here is important. So the question would then be, why has the employer of choice gone down? Relatively straightforward. The employer of choice measure talks about those colleagues who have been with us for 3 years or more. The number for this half year is 55%. This time last year it was 56%. So there's a very little difference. And a lot of that is down to the closure of a couple of sites we had. But also it's one of those things we look at and say 1% I think we can accept. The 3 measures which I'm far more happy about, and we're happy about, improving attendance, that's an improvement on that. But communicating effectively is something we're always going to have to concentrate on, but it's good to see that measure has gone up. And performing at our best is a colleague satisfaction measure, which is now at 79%. That's broadly in line with industry average, but clearly is a real focus for us as a business and as a cooperative going forward. So turning to customers, you'll see we've got one new measure in there, which is the creating loyal customers, and that's the Net Promoter Score, which is a widely used industry score. That's flat at 65 against last year's 65. Sorry, it's not a new measure, it's a flat on that performance. But generally speaking, whether compliments, reducing complaints, or creating happy customers, all of those have decreased complaints year on year. The creating happy customers one is worth noting. You shop with us, we ask for a CSAT measure, we survey customers, and that at the moment is at 75 as an average against last year's 74. So generally speaking, from a customer point of view, I think we're in the right place. You then come to delivery. A couple of bits worth calling out here, I think. From a trading responsibly point of view, we talk about the percentage reduction that we have in greenhouse gas emissions. That also ties into the energy saving we do. As mentioned in the video, we won the ED Award for energy saving projects, and Peter's mentioned about a refrigeration expenditure we've put in. We've invested somewhere in the region of about £5 million in energy efficiency equipment over the last 18 months. That not only reduces our energy bill, as you'd expect, but what it also does is reduce our energy usage by some 12% or so over the course of the first half, and measures to improve that will still continue. But working safely, the number of accidents that we have, I'm glad to say that's gone down. It's at 415 in the first half of this year against a 453 number last year. And the final measure we come to is in terms of reduction in controllable food waste. We've reduced that waste by 17% in the first half of this year. Last year it was 16%, so obviously it gets more difficult each time you do it. But through good auspices of people like Too Good To Go, and you may have seen those, making sure that whatever food we can, we make sure we don't throw it away and waste it. So, Chair, I think from a steering wheel point of view, hopefully that's relatively comprehensive.
Thanks, Peter and Pete. Just before we move on to the next section, could I, on behalf of the board, endorse Phil's commentary, our colleagues? I have the pleasure of going out on a number of site visits on a regular basis over the year, and I'm always amazed by the commitment and passion that our colleagues have for this organisation and the business they work for and the colleagues that they work with. So I would like to pass on our thanks as well. So we can now move on to review the minutes from the half-yearly meetings held in October 2022. You'll have seen these in the meeting papers on our website and hopefully had the chance to review them. And for those of you in the room, they're on the pink paper. Can I ask anybody in the room if they have any matters arising? And were there any matters arising in the questions specifically relating to the half-year minutes? Any questions in the matters arising in the half-year minutes?
I had a question, Luke Blakey, South London, about the distribution.
Just wait a minute, because is it specifically related to the half-year minutes, or is it a general one? Because the general one will come back to that.
Oh, right.
Yeah, come back.
Chair.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. We've also provided for information the draft minutes from the AGM and the special meeting held in May. No doubt some of you will have attended these. For those in the room, these are on the green paper. And we'll be formally approving these minutes at the AGM next May, but as well to provide them now, as there might prompt questions you want to raise later in the general question and answer session. So we will vote on the minutes on the pink paper, the minutes of last year's half-year meeting, at the end of the meeting. So I'm now going to hand over to Phil Ponsonby, who will provide a short update on what's been going on since the half year and looking ahead for the remainder of the year. Phil.
Thank you, Helen. There's no slides from me, so I'm just going to talk. And hopefully this will prompt a few questions when we get to the Q&A session as well. So yeah, we've had a positive first half of the year, as you've just seen from the film, and also from my colleagues to my right, who have explained some of the specific numbers and results. So we have a good start to the year, and as I said, that's in the sort of backdrop of quite challenging trading conditions. And I think we all hoped that as we look towards the second half of the year, things would start to improve, inflation would continue falling, the world would start to steady, and so on. And I think you will all agree as members that it's certainly not the case. The macro geopolitical landscape is extremely fragile. And that will have all sorts of connotations, I'm sure, not least on oil prices and what that might mean for commodities because of the impact of the situation in the Middle East. So we're uncertain as to what that will mean for us as we go forwards, but the uncertainty clearly is a significant concern for all businesses and consumers alike, and that affects consumer confidence, and consumer confidence will usually result in a reduction in expenditure, as will a continued high inflation rate. Obviously, it's just been announced at 6.7%, which has held the inflation rate. I think the forecasters are still suggesting that'll fall as we go through the year, and the government will hit its target of halving that 11% position at the start of the year by the time we get to the end of the year. But it's unlikely we're going to see any downward move on interest rates if we don't see an increase, but certainly not going to see any downward move on interest rates. And of course, that will dampen the enthusiasm of people's ability to spend during the key Christmas trading period. And it may give some rise to a concern about making commitments to book holidays in the new year, added to which 1.6 million households next year will see their fixed rate mortgages expire. And so if those interest rates remain high, they're going to be seeing increased mortgage repayments, which will again potentially dampen their enthusiasm to spend money. The new funding from government announced in respect to childcare, that starts to kick in April next year. We're not going to see any benefit from that in the second half of this year. So, we will still see challenges around our ability to drive that occupancy performance because of people's real concerns about cost of living and expenditure. And what we're seeing across the childcare business is people looking to be more flexible. So whereas they may have put a child into a nursery on a full-time basis, now they're looking to put them in for a number of days and work from home some days. The natural sort of thing you'd expect people to do when they're facing into these challenges, but of course it does impact our numbers. So we're being very cautious about the numbers for the second half of the year, and obviously we're already some way into it, and we can see some of these things playing out. And the other area that I think it's worth mentioning to members, and you'll be all aware of this from the press, that we've seen a significant increase in shoplifting incidents of recent times, and you'll know that's been reported widely in the press. I've met this year with the Police and Crime Commissioner of the West Midlands, Simon Foster. This morning I met with the Police and Crime Commissioner of Thames Valley, Matthew Barber, along with a couple of hundred of our store managers to talk about these issues. We are investing significant money into our stores and systems to deal with this, but it is a real problem, and it is impacting on our numbers because our stock loss in our food stores is up as a result of it, and that will affect the numbers as we go into the second half of the year. Some positives, obviously, we've just seen for the first time pay rises probably exceed inflation, which is good news, because that will start to support people's household income, and it will improve that. But at the same time, we're seeing unemployment starting to rise now for the first time. So as organisations take account of the impact of higher interest rates and business rates, etc., we expect to see that continued picture of a squeeze on costs and expenditure, and that will lead, we feel, to further job losses. So it's a really uncertain picture in terms of the macroeconomics and what's going on there. I know you all know this, but as a business, we have to reflect on it and look at our forecasts and make the right decisions with the board in terms of where we invest your money as we go forwards. But we are continuing to invest. We're investing in new sites. Lanesfield Nursery in Wolverhampton is now open. As Peter said, the new nursery here at Warwick in our headquarters, which will open as soon as we get that Ofsted registration, which we're hoping to get in the next few weeks. We've relocated the site at Penkridge into a new format store. So we are continuing to invest in new sites and also to invest in new technologies, new websites for our travel business, new in-store technologies in our stores around electronic shelf edge labels, new security measures, as I've already said, but also investing in reducing energy, as Pete said. Significant money spent on new refrigeration, new systems to take the cost of energy down. We have hedged our most of our energy now through to March next year, so we are pretty protected in terms of energy price hikes if we saw some shocks from what's going on across the world. But actually what we want to do is continue to invest in that technology to continue to bring the costs down. And we're investing in opening new services as well, some ways through digitisation, but also through partnerships. Peter mentioned that the post office income was slightly down on last year, but you're seeing as new services crop up. So we recently launched a series of lockers in 18 of our sites with this in-post locker service where people can collect parcels from things they've purchased online. We've already completed transactions for over 60,000 parcels since implementing that in just a few months. So you can see how these services are shifting, how those things are continuing to shape what we do. And we will continue, as I said, to invest in keeping our colleagues safe. So what we've also been doing is bringing that refreshed purpose to life, which you heard about, supporting our members through cost of living. So delivering that new proposition through a much greater number of offers in store. I think the video said that nearly 1 in 3 transactions are now with our members. It is now 1 in 3 transactions. In fact, we're up at 34% now in terms of member participation. And we expect that to continue to grow through this year to get to around 35% as we get past Christmas. And 44,000 new members was an incredible achievement in the first half of the year. And we want to support our communities. When we surveyed our members and we worked with our members and we worked with the board and the MEC and many of the people in this room worked with us to look at how we engage our members and how we share our profits and how we do the things we do, what our members said to us were 2 things, the 2 most important things. First and foremost, give me better value now. I don't want to wait for that value. And secondly, support our communities. And that came through loud and clear. And so we reshaped the way we propose to share profits. We've reshaped the points allocation to support that objective and to support that overall purpose. Next year, it's 180 years since the Rochdale pioneers formed the modern cooperative movement. And I think the 7 principles that they developed back then are as relevant today as they were back then. And I think as a leading cooperative, it's important that we continue to showcase those principles through what we do. We believe we're doing that through the new refreshed purpose. We believe we're doing it through our values, whether that's through increasing member economic participation, whether it's through ensuring a healthy democratic member engagement, which we're seeing through the number of members voting, the number of members standing for board and MEC, really important elements. A commitment to education through that investment in our childcare business, which I think showcases more than any in terms of that focus on education. Working more closely with other co-ops, cooperation amongst cooperatives. I think there's a real sense now nationally that the co-ops want to work really well together to face into those challenges. And a lot of activities taken place in the last few months between the CEOs of the major cooperative societies to explore how we can do more together, how we can work more effectively together for the benefit of our members and the benefit of our colleagues as well. And you'll see some of the results of that work, I'm sure, in the coming months. And finally, concern for our communities. And I think, as I said, the change and the focus, the ability to increase funding for our communities will allow our colleagues and our members increasingly to join in and do more of that work we want to do with our communities. So, there are challenges ahead, on a macro scale, on a geopolitical scale, in the UK, and we will face into those challenges. We're a resilient organisation, as you know, from some of the challenges we've faced in the past, and we will face into them and we will deal with them. But I'm actually still excited by the future because the things we've done and the things we've put in place and that your board have signed off in terms of those investments and those format developments we've made and those investments in digital channels. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword in many respects, or bittersweet story for me to tell you, but I think overall I'm looking forward to the next quarter and I'm looking forward to being at the AGM in May to report on the full year results. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. So we now come to the question and answer session. We're going to do our best to cover off as many questions as we can in the time available. I should note we've received a number of questions from members in advance of the meeting, and those will be prepared as formal answers, and we'll be getting back to each of the members directly. So I'm going to start by taking questions from members in the room and then take some questions online. As a reminder for those of you online, just type your questions in the Q&A section. Try our best to answer questions in the order they're received. We'll rotate through, so it's one question a member. And if there are similar questions which have already been asked, then we will skip those to ensure we cover a wider range of topics as possible. And I should just add that any members with individual issues to cover off will take those outside of the formal meeting to ensure they get the time and attention they need. Do any members in the room have any questions? And I think probably need to come to the gentleman at the back. And then we've got one at the front.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Luke Blakey, South London Mid-Counties member, etc., etc. I've got a question about equity, share capital on page 19. So that's not so much in Phil's control, but it is a measure of members through the trust in the prudential ability of the board, us sending in our subscriptions of 50 or 5,000 or £10 to get the interest applied. I had a question about the proposition of the member passport, the member risk capital account passbooks. I spoke to Edward about, I think it was Oxford half-yearly meeting 5-6 years ago. Channel Islands, love to emulate them, can't do it in England due to the law. But I was just wondering, I am concerned, we're noting sort of 5 million down from the audited accounts to the audited accounts. This is a measure of the risk members take by entrusting the board with their potential ability of our money. And I'm just aware, I'm aware it's a sort of a post-John Major consensus that the Bank of England targets inflation at 2%, that's consumer inflation. So I'm asked the board, what measures or what report can you make on the member proposition, the member share account? And just to say that if the figures we're seeing today is 80,574,000, if you take 5 years of inflation at 2%, that would mean that in 5 years' time, we would need to have 88.9 million on that account, just for non-real terms, because inflation is going to be more than 2%, but just to not get any smaller. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I'm happy to answer that. So there are two main areas where we get financing and backing for the society. The first is, and probably the most important, is from our members, and the second is from our banks. Now, they serve two different purposes. Now, we would love for our members to have the first choice to invest in the society, and clearly they do. What we've seen actually over a slightly longer period than that, probably the best part of 2 years, is actually we've seen member share capital to come away a bit. And it's not really, or my view is, it's not really a testimony as to how we're performing, because actually when you go back a few years and we actually closed a energy business and made a very substantial loss actually of many millions, tens of millions of pounds, that actually member investments went up after that. What you see is a big differential that we used to have on the interest rates on member share accounts and member bonds in particular versus the interest rates you can now get in the market, which is completely caught up. What we have been doing over the last few months is increasing the interest rates, mainly on bonds, but we have also done it on share accounts. In fact, from the 1st of October, we increased share account interest rates a further 0.5% to 3%. And actually, members can get between 6.25% and 7.25% for 3 years in mid-counties. Now, you can get 4, 5, 6%. In some accounts and some cash ISAs, etc. You can't get that for 3 years. So the longer term investment, we're trying to reward members. The other thing we have seen certainly over that period, certainly there's been some cost of living playing into that. There's been people renewing mortgages on higher interest rates, and people have been taking some capital out to actually sort their own personal circumstances out in regard to those sort of big ticket items. What we haven't done is really talk to our members about the opportunities to invest in mid-counties, not very loudly. There is only about 2,500 members out of the best part of 700,000 members that invest what we call investment bonds. Now, we know there's an opportunity to talk to our members about having a greater stake in this society, and that's what we're going to do. And then very quickly on your second question, which I think is about the way in which we administer the accounts with passports. We also, at the moment, if you're a brand new member to us and haven't invested before, we ask you to send your driving licence or passport. Now, that's soon going to change. We've got a new, what you call know your customer checking process. It won't require you to send pieces of paper around the place. And hopefully in 2 months' time, we're going to the board with a proposal to actually move ourselves onto effectively a banking platform. So it'll be a far better experience for members administering their own accounts and share bonds.
Thank you for that explanation. We have another question here in the room. Microphone, thank you.
Thank you. Over 8 weeks ago, I made not a complaint, I made a concern regarding my emails to Chippy Norton. I left it for a while, and then I got so fed up that I decided to actually make a complaint. I found out that nobody from the management of either the membership or the phone co-op, as I call it still, had the courtesy to give me a response within the time that is given by the society, i.e. 3 days and 15 days. I lost over 8,000 emails over that time, and all I was told was, well, if we'd acted quicker, we could have saved them for you. But that doesn't answer the work that I lost. So I'm still now today with no email access whatsoever to my account, and be quite blunt with you, getting a little bit brassed off by it. And nobody has really done anything about it. If you lot can, please do so. But I can't get anybody to do anything about it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I must say I'm sorry to hear the difficulties they had, and I think, obviously I don't know anything about this, and possibly people here on the table who don't either, but we'll take this offline and look to get it addressed for you. Thank you for raising it. Okay. Any other questions here in the room? We've got a gentleman in the middle, and then I'm going to move to the online questions, make sure we cover those.
Gary Smith from Bolton-on-the-Water. I think the store's fantastic, and I think the model's brilliant. However, you briefly mentioned shoplifting, and I've witnessed myself blatant shoplifting, and the staff are powerless to really help stop it happening. Could you go a little bit more detail about possible plans, like perhaps a security guard, or perhaps the tills, for instance, that the automated tills were self-serve. There's no sort of weighing scale system there. So when somebody scans, somebody doesn't have to bother scanning half their shopping, and they could get away with it. Are you planning things like that for the future?
Certainly, and what I would say is that, deliberately, and I think rightly, we're clear with our colleagues, we don't expect them to tackle shoplifters, because shoplifters are not, people that are struggling to feed their families in the main. 70% of all shoplifting that takes place in the UK is by people that are addicted to drugs or alcohol and are desperate to fuel those habits, and therefore will steal to sell the product on in order to fund their habits. And therefore we're quite clear with our colleagues that we don't want them to tackle shoplifters. When I first came into food retail, you were expected to. In fact, you're expected to drag people back in the shop. We're clearly not telling our colleagues to do that, which means we've got to be better in terms of investing in technologies to do it for us, and working in partnership with the police to identify repeat offenders, to use CCTV imagery and the sort of technologies we now have to track down offenders, to take them to court, to deal with them in that way, but also to use technologies in the areas that so for example with the self-checkouts, using camera technology to match the activity of scanning with the actual with the camera. So if you fail to scan an item, then the camera will detect that. And so those are technologies that we're now deploying. We're also increasing the tagging systems that we're putting in to our stores. We've just spent the last 8 weeks with 2 stores forensically studying this. And so one was in Oxford and Cowley Road, and the other was actually at Chipping Norton, which is not a dissimilar operation to Bolton-on-the-Water. And the learnings from that are being utilised to inform our further investments. So we've done a lot of work in terms of things like body cameras for colleagues in numbers of stores, headsets for colleagues for better communication, better visibility with CCTV, things such as smoke cloaks which are deployed out of hours if someone breaks into a store. So there's a whole range of areas, and we're also working with the National Bureau for Crime Statistics, I think it's called, where we now report all of our incidents through that portal, and that information is then provided to the police in an intelligence form rather than just an information form, and that allows us to track repeat offenders that are moving around stores as well, and the CCTV images are used to build case files. It's not an easy thing to tackle. We're working with, as I said, the police, but also the Association of Convenience Store, British Resale Council, other cooperatives, and I know that government and the Home Office are looking at a number of initiatives in order to support retail staff, because one of the things that we've been challenging is that, you know, if a colleague in one of our stores is assaulted, quite often the police are treating it as a retail crime, not a crime or not an act of abuse. And if that happened out on the streets or in a hospital somewhere, they would deal with it very differently. And so that's a big part of the pressure. So I think there's 3 areas that we're working hard at. 1 is improving information and reporting, 2 is investing in technology, and 3 is putting pressure on government to put in place better legislation to support shop staff across the board and to ensure that people are protected. But a lot of work going on.
Very quickly.
I'm very pleased to hear all that. There is certain times of the year when these incidents occur a lot more, and I think you know what I'm talking about. And perhaps you could take on security staff temporarily during those times of the year, without naming certain community people that come to our area. And that's usually, I can tell you that a lot of people, for instance, the local leisure centre, remove all items for sale and take them behind the counter at those times. And also, you can't do that, of course. And other areas actually close their pubs and cafes and everything at them times. So maybe some temporary cover at certain times of the year, maybe.
Yes, certainly, and we have roaming guards that we deploy across our stores, and they will be deployed on the basis of the statistics that we have around reports of incidents. However, if there are specific events that take place around stores at times of the year, then we will put guards in to support the stores. And so I'll follow up on Bourton Walton specifically in terms of when that event is and whether or not we've already put a plan in place to deal with that, because that's what we usually do in sites where there are particular times of year where there's, you know, festivals or events or incidents or people congregating that's going to cause a problem, and so it's absolutely what we do.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for the kind comments on Bourton. So I'm now going to move to the online questions. Pete Westall and Pete Kelly, you're going to feed these through. I'm going to read them out and give us a flavour.
Thanks, Helen. I suspect this might be coming back to me, but I'm going to throw it to you first. Can you, message from Kevin Dawes. Evening, Kevin. Can you clarify what the shortage occupation list, SOL, is, which is referred to in the half-year report? Am I correct in understanding that this allows an employer to pay migrants 20% less for the same work? Please confirm that if the co-op is using the SOL, they are not taking advantage of this opportunity to pay workers 20% less.
You want to answer that? You can do it. All right, I don't mind. I'm happy to answer. You can if you want.
Yeah, let me try and then come back to it. So, from a childcare point of view, we have a recruitment issue in certain of our sites, not all our sites, but certain of our sites. And over a course of a number of years, we've looked at what can you do for innovative solutions. Sally Bonner, who's Chief Operating Officer for our childcare business, has done a fantastic job in working with BMET, for the sake of argument, and other universities to make childcare a real profession of choice and to get people to come into it as a career choice. The problem we've had is, because of the increased demand for childcare, that's been short-term fixed in the past by workers from the European Union. We've gone over to countries like Spain, really innovative solution to get those workers to come here and treat it as a proper profession. Cue Brexit, that suddenly stopped. What the government have introduced is a shortage occupation list, which effectively says if you are a person who wants to pursue a profession which is on that list, you can work in the UK. We have been trying for a long period of time now to get childcare to be recognised, as indeed it is in Scotland at the moment, as a profession of choice where you should be able to allow workers to come over from the European Union to supplement and complement the current workforce, particularly during a period of time when we're trying to grow our own in that area. So it's absolutely nothing to do with paying less. You wouldn't expect us to do that as a co-op. We probably should have made it clearer, which is my fault in the half-year report, but certainly that's a role of the skills, a shortage occupationalist.
Thanks, Pete. The next question that's come in.
Luckily, there's nothing to do. This is, sorry, Kevin, I'm going to try and change it so we get other questions from others. And we have one at the moment from Callum. Given the solid growth in co-op travel since the pandemic, are there any plans to upgrade your website to enable online bookings and further take advantage of this demand?
Yeah, and certainly I mentioned that investment in technology and the digital capability in a number of our businesses, and particularly in travel. We upgraded the website last year for our agents, and so the website that our agents use was improved last year, and more recently we've upgraded the Co-op Holidays website for members. Now, we've not got yet to the stage where you can fully book online, because if you think about it, to book online, what you're actually doing is you're using that website to connect with lots and lots of different tour operations and suppliers, and we need to make sure that is slick and it is working, but it is absolutely our ambition to do it. So the Co-op Holidays website will become a bookable website. I'm looking at Mark sat in the room there, and I'm just saying, when is it likely to be a bookable website, Mark? Have we got a... Soon. This year, hopefully, yeah.
Non-bookable was Wednesday last week.
Yeah.
So, we're going to follow with the bookable site very soon.
Yeah, so we just launched the new one last week in terms of the new Co-op Holidays website. But we want, obviously the busiest time of year for our travel business is January. So we really would like to have that new capability in place before the start of January, which will allow us to take full advantage of it. But it does illustrate that investment I mentioned that we are making, not just in bricks and mortar, but in digital services as well.
The board colleagues will note the reference to the word soon.
He won't get away with that, trust me.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Can we have the next question?
Yeah, next question is again from Kevin, but it's an important question for so many people. So last year I asked whether a co-op were paying their staff at least the real living wage, and was told they were working towards doing this. Can I ask if the Mid-Counties Co-op are now paying the real living wage of £10.90?
I think the national living wage, I think the real living wage is higher. I think, certainly we've made a pledge. I made a pledge, I think, on behalf of the board at the AGM year before this, that we would continue to pay above the national living wage, and we've continued to do that. We've not met the requirements for the real living wage yet, which is a higher number, and actually it's just down to affordability. Because clearly the national living wage has increased at rates above inflation for a significant number of years, and I think we all agree that's the right thing. So the base rate of pay for the lowest paid people has been going up at a higher rate of inflation and a higher rate than the rest of the pay. So the rest of our colleagues' pay, including the management and everyone else, and so that's continued. But of course that puts pressure in terms of costs and affordability, but what we have pledged to do, and we will, I think, continue to do when we hear what that is announced to be for the start for April next year, is pay a differential above it. So whatever the national living wage is, we will pay above that. And I'd also just mention that pay is important. Clearly it's important for people, but it's also about a range of other benefits as well. I mean, we still pay people in our food stores for breaks. A lot of retailers don't do that, so they deduct breaks from their pay. We don't do that. So when you blend those things back in, it makes a difference to that overall rate. We also increase the discount to colleagues. During the pandemic, we gave them an enhanced discount, and we've kept that in place. We've given commitments so far to keep that in place to the end of January next year, which means they're getting 20% off all their food shopping. They're getting significant discounts if they put their children into our childcare nurseries, and they're getting discounts in other areas such as utilities, fare phones, also in travel as well. So pay is important to colleagues. We talk to them a lot about this, about what really matters. And we'll continue to do that, and we'll continue with the pledge to pay above the national living wage. In terms of the real living wage and when we're able to get to that point, I don't know when that will be. And we also need to look at our operations, because they're clearly operating nurseries in London as a significantly different set of pressures than operating stores and businesses in further north and into the West Midlands. And so there are sort of these regional geographical challenges that we face into as well. And so we need to be flexible in how we deal with pay.
Okay, thanks for that, Phil. And I think the added benefits that you talk about are something that we know that our colleagues appreciate, but equally we know that this is something that does occupy significant time for the board through the remuneration committee and the the efforts that we take to look through the benefits available to all of our colleagues. So it is very important to us. Next question.
I suspect maybe the gentleman on my right-hand side. So again from Kevin, actually, whilst I welcome the fact that member trade has increased 5.5%, and you'll remember we spoke about member trade at half year being now 30.1%, can we be told whether turnover increased on last year, which I think you've covered anyway, Peter, but probably more importantly, how far did the welcome increase in the number of members contribute or explain this increase in member trade?
Well, yeah, just to go back over one or two of the numbers that we went through earlier on, as you say, in the half-year member trade. And member trade, this is the number of member trade transactions as a percentage of total transactions, so that actually isn't a value, that the value is actually higher. So member trade as a percent of transactions is just over 30% at half-year. Actually, it's grown to nearly 34% as we sit here today. The turnover is probably higher than that. The turnover is probably more like 35 to 38% of turnover, so that will put it around about 260, 270 million of that 773 number I gave you earlier. And if there's 40,000 more members, that's around about 10%, 12% additional active members. So I think you can attribute somewhere in the region of that to member trade. So they are fairly general numbers, but that's the sort of proportion we would expect to see in half one.
Phil?
Yeah, and I think it's also about what we're building and working towards, because I think in order to encourage more of our shoppers to become members, we're giving them more and more reasons to become members, and we're seeing that in terms of that increase in member participation. But that's also about a bit of an investment as well, giving members greater discounts in order, to give them good reasons to become members in the first place. But actually and then engaging them about why membership's important, because it may be that a shopper becomes a member because they want to save money, but when they become a member, what do we do? Is that the end of the journey, or do we then engage them about why it's great to be a member of a co-op and why that's different to just being a card holder at a competitor's retail store? And also through that investment in digital channels, it means that we can start to give more of our members more reasons to shop across more of our different trading operations. Because if you think about it, if you're a member shopping in one of our food stores that doesn't have a travel branch there, it's hard to book a holiday with us. And less than 5% of our members use us for their holidays. And yet I'm sure more than 50% of our members have holidays. And so we know that by improving that digital capability and giving them an easier access to information to be able to book holidays, that more of our members that shop in food, for example, will start to use services such as travel or our utilities partnerships in terms of the telecoms or energy, etc., and so on. And so it's very much about what we're building towards, and we are prepared to make investments up front as a society to grow that membership base in order to encourage that greater cooperation and greater cooperative activity, and to cross-trade across more of our operations.
Okay, so thanks, Phil, for that. I think we've got one more question online, and I'll come back into the room. So if anybody else in the room has another question.
So it's a question from Alan. Would the discount for colleagues, which clearly we enhanced earlier, be extended after January, considering the way the interest rate and the cost of living crisis is so still unstable?
We've given a commitment that the enhanced discounts across food, childcare, travel, utilities will be in place till the end of January, and we will review it well in advance of that, and we'll discuss it with the board as well. And funny enough, I was with 300 of our food colleagues this morning at their conference, and that was a question that came up, and I said to my colleague that asked the question, the best way for our colleagues to ensure that we look at that favourably really is to shop in the lead up to Christmas. And I know anecdotally, and I talk to colleagues when I'm out around stores, it is making a big difference to them. We recognise that. And so, you know, we'd want to try and do it. But we've got to look at the affordability and make sure it's something that you know, the society can afford to do. But the more colleagues take advantage of it and use it as a benefit, I think the more chance there is that the board and management will look at that and say, why wouldn't we? We've not made a decision yet. We will be talking about it relatively shortly, ahead of that deadline in January. But as I said to them, yeah, it's a big. We really do understand how important the benefit is to many of our colleagues.
Thanks, Phil. We've got time for one more question in the room, if there was anybody with a burning question they hadn't been able to ask. Okay. Oh, we'll get you a mic and come in. Try and keep it a short question, just because we're running out because of time. That would be great. Thanks, Luke.
Luke Blakey, South London. Why isn't the chair across the co-op tel mitigation to our co-op, whatever? This is a fairly major part of what was our telco business, providing emails to member customers. We're giving it to it's run by a consortium of co-ops and charities. Why isn't the board across that, please?
Well, let me answer first.
Well, the board actually.
I understand you want to hear from the board, but let me give some specifics on this because I think it puts it into context. So there were 6,500 members that had email accounts. 6,500. That was costing the society over £100,000 a year to maintain that service. 6,500 members. And I appreciate it was an important service for those 6,500 members as a free service. But £100,000 a year is a lot of our members' money to spend on that. And so we wanted to find a solution. We found a solution with another cooperative that can take on that service. Obviously, there's a charge. We've written out to the members to make them aware of that. I think about 1,200 so far have taken up the new offer. You're one of them. 1,200 have taken up, and we're communicating, working to help them. We've had about 85 complaints about that, because clearly most people would prefer to continue to receive a free service, and I understand that. Why wouldn't you? But at a cost of over £100,000 a year, it's not sustainable for us. And it was a difficult decision. It was discussed with the board, and the board challenged us because originally we said we just need to stop this, and the board said you can't just stop it. Find a solution. And so we were sent away to find a solution. The solution we found is the one that's been put in place.
Phil, it's not a free service. You may have made it a free service, but you had to be a member customer to get those accounts. Yeah. And as Pete said, there's only 2,500 that have got share capital accounts. You've got 3 times more with email accounts with your co-op or Mid-Counties Co-op or the phone co-op. And the communication has not been good. Okay. I'm aghast the board don't know what the hell is going on. That this hasn't been answered by the board because it's a matter of the members and the board. Sure, it's an operational matter, but I'm sure the negotiation was done by the board because why wouldn't it have been? But yeah, thanks, Phil. And can I have the answer from the board, please, the people I asked?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond on behalf of the board. I think, first of all, there are some decisions that are operational decisions and the board doesn't get involved in operational matters. In relation to this, we recognise, and Phil's acknowledged that it wasn't, the communication initially wasn't very good. The board has to make difficult decisions, and we made a decision in this after we'd looked through the propositions. We made the decision. We accept that there'll be people who will not be happy about it, and we acknowledge that yes, as I say, the communications in the early stages could have been a lot better. If there are still issues over it, then we'll be happy to take those up. But from a board perspective, we have been through and we've considered the propositions, and that was the difficult decision we had to make. Okay.
That's very pretty, but when were you going to consult the current members? And you act as if it's over. As far as I'm aware, I've signed up to pay the £22, on which I will not be receiving any kind of dividend. But as far as I'm aware, I will have to check my emails, but I've yet to sign up to pay that agreement. My duty of care still lies with the co-op that I happen to have a co-ownership stake in, which you happen to be chair of. So I'm aghast. But thank you.
Can I just say, sorry, it's not all dividend. Right. It's something about.
George, you need the mic.
Sorry, apologies. I get a bit brassed off when people say it's always dividend. It's not about dividend. There's a wider cooperative movement. Phil has said, and the chair has said, that we're looking at expanding, if you like, the cooperative movement. And that's what it's all about. It's not insular, it's outward-looking movement. So, you know, I get a bit brassed off with people like you who say, you know, oh, what about my dividend? It ain't always that, mate. Sorry.
Move the discussion on. Is there anybody in the room who wants to raise a question that isn't related to that topic? Because I think, you know, we've heard from a couple of members with different views, and I think it's important that we do hear from other members who have any other questions. And I'm very conscious of time, and I've now run over on that section. So,
What's a comment, isn't it?
there's a comment coming online. Is it?
Question which isn't related to that subject.
Sorry.
There's one more question online which isn't related.
Yeah, we will have to deal with that question online separately. Sorry about that. We've moved on. We now move on to voting for the two formal items we have on the agenda. So as a reminder, only those who've been a member for at least 6 months are eligible to vote. So a small number of you won't be voting today, so if you can bear with us for a few minutes. I hope that all of you can vote do take the opportunity to do so. Having your say as a member is a fundamental part of what our cooperative society, in fact any cooperative society, is all about. So we hope you feel encouraged to vote. As we're voting in person here and online, Edward, our secretary, will confirm the combined formal results at the end of the meeting. For those of you voting online, we're asking you to vote by raising your hand in Microsoft Teams. As I mentioned earlier, the Teams functionality isn't the quickest, especially when you've got a large number of people in different locations. We'll be voting in reverse order from the norm. So we'll start by asking those of you who wish to abstain to raise their hand, and then those who wish to vote against to raise their hand. With those votes taken, we'll then be assuming everyone else is voting in favour. We'll give plenty of time for people online to register the votes. So people in the room, please do bear with us, but make your views clear as I call them out. I'll advise you when to vote, and then once again when the voting's closed. And note that we have the technology to lower your hand automatically within Teams for those of you online. So just to reiterate the point I mentioned earlier, if the voting technology fails us, we'll have a couple more tries, and if the issue persists, we'll invite you to another brief meeting session on the 25th of October to conduct the online voting only. So with that covered, we can move to the formal vote, please. First, the adoption of the half-yearly report. So on behalf of the board, I ask the meeting to receive and adopt the half-year report to the 29th of July 2023, which has been approved by the board. If you wish to vote abstain, please raise your hand now. Those in the room, if anybody wishes to abstain, they raise their hands. Okay. So I have a long time count, so allow people online. So those online, if you wish to abstain, please raise your hand online. We've got a fair amount of time to allow people to vote. I know it can be difficulty to find where you need to vote, but I'm going to be closing the vote shortly. We'll close the vote in 3, 2, 1 now. So we'll lower hand in Teams. If you wish to vote against, please raise your hand now. Those in the room, if you wish to vote against, please raise your red card. Again, bear with me in the room. It is just take a bit of time to catch it with those online. Again, for those online, if you're voting against, please raise your hand now. Okay, I'll be getting ready to close the vote. Now, closing the vote shortly. Vote will be closed in 3, 2, 1 now. Okay, so everyone else, we will be noting down as a vote for. You would wish us to raise the people in the room to raise their red cards? No, we've assumed a vote. So we can now move to formally approve the minutes from last year's half-year meetings. So on behalf of the board, I ask the meeting to approve the minutes from the half-year meetings from October 2022. Again, we're going in reverse. So if you wish to vote abstain, please raise your hands now. So those online, if you wish to vote to abstain against the half-year minutes, please vote now. It always feels like a very long time watching these, so I'll tell you when the voting is getting ready to close. I'll be getting to close the vote in a minute. We're closing the vote. 3, 2, 1. Now. And if you wish to vote against the minutes on last year's half-yearly meeting, can you raise your hand now? Okay. Anybody in the room, can you please show if you wanted to vote against? Okay, so we're voting online, we're voting against. If you wish to vote against, put your hands up online. And we're about to close the vote. We're closing the vote in 3, 2, 1 now. Okay, and once again, we'll note everyone down as voting for. Everyone else down as voting for. That concludes the voting for this evening. So we can now turn to the provisional results of the recent elections. I'm going to ask Edward to give you the details.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Hannah, and good evening, members. Yes, as you'll see on the slide there, that these are the provisional results because just very recently one candidate in the board elections has told me that they may not be able to take up their position on the board. We're due a discussion on Monday when they'll be able to confirm whether they can or not. This is due to unforeseen circumstances. So we're provisional at the moment because it prevents me from formally declaring the results tonight, but I'll be doing so shortly after I spoke to the candidate on Monday. So you'll get the posters in stores and it'll be published on the website as well. So provisionally, and this is for the board election, and you'll remember there were 6 vacancies and 16 candidates. So if this is the next slide, we've got the votes cast presently. So this is from the person with the most votes down to the person with the fewest. And then you'll see the next slide. So that's where we're at the moment. Depending on what this candidate decides to do will be depending on whether the candidate who's 7th in the order at the moment is elected or not. Elections for 3-year terms. So that'll happen early next week. It's more straightforward, if we could just move on, please, for the MEC election, the Member Engagement Committee election, where we had 10 candidates for 7 positions. And here are the results. These are the 7 candidates who were elected. You'll see there it's for 3-year terms. And then just overleaf are those, unfortunately, who are unsuccessful. So that's official now for the MEC. I normally let you know as well the turnout figures. We're down on this year, actually, which is a bit concerning. Normally we run about 8.5%, 9% turnout and about 40,000 or just under voting. This time it's 25,000 voted and turnout's just under 5.5%. So we're doing a survey now. You guys have probably all voted, and everyone who's tuned in online has probably voted, but do please fill in the survey, and we need responses from those who haven't as well, just to try and see if we can get a good feel for why members haven't voted. So there we go. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Edward. So as you say, we'll know the final results of the election shortly, and they'll be published on the website and in store. I'd like to also offer my personal thanks to Olivia Birch for all her hard work and contribution to the Society over the last few years, as she's standing down from the board this year, and also to Chas Townley, a former chair of the Member Engagement Committee, for his contribution over the years, and he's decided not to stand this year, so thank you for your service over the years. So we can now confirm the voting results from tonight.
Yes, yeah. Thank you again. Yes, so I've got the results now. For the half-year report, we had 147 in favour, none against, 3 abstentions. For the minutes, we had 10 abstentions, 1 against. I just need to add up the numbers. It's 138 in favour, so very comfortably passed. There is just one question's come in online saying, do we need to adjourn the meeting? Because I can't declare the results. The answer is that no, so that's covered in the rules.
Thanks, Edward. Okay, so we now come to our last item, which is any other business. Does anybody have a member have anything else they wish to raise?
One small question. The development bond is not covered by the financial conduct. Get the microphone.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Sorry, yeah. The development bond is not covered by the financial compensation scheme. Is there any move to go into that direction, then you might get more investment because you're offering a good percentage.
No, is the answer to that. We're not necessarily looking to do that. I mean, we would have to do an awful lot more around, I think, governance to be able to do that. I mean, it's not something we're actively considering. Our members invest in society in the ways they do at the moment for some time. It's only recently that we've seen a change in investments, and actually, as I said to the earlier question, I think that's got a lot to do with the way in which energy prices, mortgages, cost of living, etc., has changed over that period, as opposed to anything else. So there are no plans to look at that as it stands at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so anything else any other business online? So, yeah.
If there's nothing else online, if there's nothing else online, if there's nothing else online, we do have one other important thing to raise, which is this is Helen Wiseman's last members' meeting as president, and indeed at the end of this meeting, or in fact when the results are finally declared by Edward on Monday, as it now is, Helen will finish her term as president. And it's been 6 years. Helen served for 6 years as president. She became president in 2017. It's probably not the 6 years you'd have chosen if you had that choice, and if you had sort of the ability to look into the future 6 years ago. And the world has certainly changed a lot since then. It's been a pretty momentous period. One of the first things Helen had to do was see the transition to a new CEO, Phil. So it may seem strange, but she's been here longer than Phil. And then, of course, moving into 2018 as well, we had the merger with the phone co-op. In 2019, we had the crisis in the energy market, which saw around a third of our competitors go out of business. And we had to leave that market, which was not an easy process. Of course, in the same year, we took on the Thomas Cook Travel Consortium after they went bankrupt. That was actually quite an important transaction that brought us significant additional trade. No sooner had we completed that than the COVID pandemic began. And of course, I don't really need to tell you about the impact of that, but it was absolutely massive on many areas of our business, and we still feel the ramifications of it today. And of course, in the middle of all that, we had Brexit. We had the supply chain problems that arose from Brexit and the pandemic. And in the middle of the pandemic, Helen was out delivering to our members and to members who were shielding at home. So, a very engaged president as well, as one who has ably steered our board and supported us and supported management through that period. So I think I would like to propose a vote of thanks to Helen for all her hard work for this society and for its members. And of course, Helen will continue as a board member, but really specifically want to thank her for her work as president. Thank you. Yeah, and Helen, just before you finish and close the meeting, I'm not going to get away with a few words from me because, as Vivian said, one of your first responsibilities was actually to see the transition from Ben Reed into my role, and I became CEO in August 2018, and you'd been president for 10 months at that time. And I think we quite quickly realised it wasn't going to be the walk in the park that either of us thought it might be when we agreed to take on the positions. But that said, I think I could not have asked for a stronger president throughout that period in support of me and also our colleagues. And I think perhaps what members don't always appreciate because they don't see it is how much time you put in to looking out for the colleagues across our organisation and members, and as Vivian said, out delivering shopping during the pandemic. But you spend an incredible amount of time on the road, visiting sites, talking to people, with me, with my colleagues, and that's has been really much appreciated. And I think genuinely people understand the relationship between the board and our colleagues and our members has been enhanced significantly during your time as president, and I look forward to it continuing under a new president. But I think for now, you should take real credit for that, because I think we see that in our day-to-day as management and as colleagues, and we're really grateful to you. And I'm personally grateful for the support you've given me, because it was a difficult time, as Vivian said, went through many of those particular times that we've been through together. But I think we jointly we worked at it, and with other board members and colleagues as well. But I think you personally and the support you've given me, any time of day or night, you're there at the end of the phone for me to talk to you if I need to give some advice to me, and that's been invaluable to me as a new CEO, and I thank you for it. Thank you.
Well, as I'm still president, I'm going to have the last word. I really wanted to mark this change by thanking all the board colleagues that I've served with over the years, and the executive and society colleagues, and also the members who, you know, as owners of this society, they are what sort of make this society what it is. And it's a joy when I go out on site visits to meet the colleagues, but also to have those conversations with members. Phil's just talked about the support that we've, you know, that I've given him, but I would say that all the colleagues, all the executive, and all the board members, the members of the MEC, are all part of this team that, you know, delivers for this society. Sometimes we don't get it right, but with the best of intentions. And we've got a new society purpose, and we'll continue to, a refreshed society purpose, we'll continue to deliver on that. And I know that the society will go from strength to strength under this leadership, and whoever my successor is as president. And finally, it has been an absolute privilege. So thank you. So that brings everything to a close this evening. I hope that you found it informative and had the opportunity to ask the question that you wanted to. The next AGM, under somebody else, will be at our face-to-face next year on the 11th of May at the Walsall Football Club, and I hope to see you there. There are other opportunities throughout the year for members to meet their elected members during scheduled sessions, so please do look out for more information on those on the website and come along and join us. It just leaves me to say thank you for taking the time to attend this evening, whether it be in person or online, and have a good evening. Thank you.